Hey guys, how's it going? Today I'm going to be working on my LCR meter that I got. I recently picked this up because I do a lot of capacity measuring, and a standard voltmeter just doesn't do a good enough job on some of the capacitors that I measure, as well as I now have the ability to measure inductors, which is something that really most multimeters just can't do. So after seeing a bunch of reviews on this, I opted to go this route. I do have a few other tools that can do inductance and capacitance, but for the sheer volume of capacitors that I test, this seemed to make the most sense. However, this has a shortcoming, and it is literally the short leads that are on this unit here. They just kind of don't work for the majority of cases. You don't have to have this in. You can actually put capacitors right into this unit if they have the leads available. But this unit here is what we're going to be working on today. And I was going to just go ahead and solder this up. And I thought maybe I'd bring you guys along, let you see kind of how I work. I've never done this before, not on this particular unit. And this is actually my first time working with Kelvin clips as well. And these are a little unique in that it's a 4-wire setup. Let me open these up here and let you guys kind of take a look at these here. So Kelvin clips are 4 wires rather than the traditional 2 that kind of go down to the device or to the clip in this case. In this case here, you'll see there are 4 wires, 2 and 2. Comes out to it comes out to 4. The reason being that these lines here, these wires, come all the way down, all the way to the end of this clip here, and it allows you to zero out your meter that much more efficiently. It has less error, less resistance down to the end, less capacitance, because you're able to kind of just do what you're able to do with a Kelvin clip, you simply can't do by just, shorting them out and zeroing out your meter or relling it out. It's kind of an imperfect way to do that, and Kelvin clips are the solution to that. So what we're going to be doing is installing these Kelvin clips in place of these. These are actually Kelvin clips as well, apparently. I haven't opened this up yet. I've seen a few people do this online. There's some videos on it, so if you want, you can kind of check out some of their videos. I just thought I would take you along in my process of doing this. After watching one video, I forget who it was. Sorry, I can't remember quite the guy's name, but he ran into a problem in the clips that he bought. So the first thing I'm going to do is just check to make sure that I don't run into the same problem he ran into. And for some reason, my battery keeps turning off on that. I have no idea why. Let's make sure that's plugged in. That's probably why. Not plugged in. All right. So the first thing I want to do is check for continuity. Let's get this into an audible mode. The problem he ran into was there was a short to begin with on his Kelvin clips. In this case, I want to just verify that there's no shorts, and there's not. If you watch any videos, there's only a handful that I have seen doing this process. And he, unfortunately, when he bought his clips, there was some really poor soldering going on. Let me zoom you in just a little bit here. Some poor soldering which caused a short from the shield here to the center conductor. And that's another test we can quickly do, is make sure that there's no continuity from the shield, this outer edge here, and the center conductor, this inner piece that you can see right there. So by taking the ohm meter in continuity mode, you can check between these two. If there was a short, it would sound like that. You would actually hear an audible beep. So again, I just want to do a quick check. That was me hitting the edge of the shield there. A quick check just so I don't have to do the work twice. That's good. And then the last one here, that's also good. Again, if there was a short in the braid, you would hear that there's a short. So I feel confident now that these Kelvin clips at least are good to go. And you can actually check this way. What you can do is put your ohm meter in there, and then you can check the center conductor, in which case you can see we've got continuity. And the way to really test a Kelvin clip, this is getting down to the nitty gritty, right? So if you want, you can put something insulated there. Now watch this. So now I've got these two, this alligator clip here, they're separated from each other. I'm going to do that by just putting an insulator in there. And now when I put this on one end, and I come here, I'm on my red probe here, so let's grab this red one right here. So now watch, I'm assuming that these are official Kelvin clips. This is going to be a little tricky for me to do with one hand, but I'm going to hold that on there. So this is only touching one of these leads here, which means one of them is going to ohm out. So you'll see there's nothing there, but we do have continuity here. So I'm on this top clip and it goes all the way to here. Now when I check the bottom clip, there should be no continuity to this one, and there's not, but there will be continuity to this one if it's done right, and it is. So literally, these two center conductors here go all the way down, and in this case, they go all the way to each end here, which is the way a real Kelvin clip should go. And these were pretty inexpensive. If I think about it, I'll link these on Amazon. So you guys that are looking to buy these, I looked at a few of them and I was going to go with just the kind of Amazon's default. And it turns out that was, I think, the one that gentleman, I think, again, I think his page is three initials, like TXR or TRX. Again, my apologies. If I do find it, I'll maybe also show that in the video so I could at least link to his, because his was the video that I watched when I saw him do this process. And I'm kind of learning from his mistake so I don't have to do the work twice. When he did it, he got it all done and he couldn't calibrate the meter. This has some calibration settings and he ended up failing the calibration. And then that caused him to take everything apart, all of this back apart, and realize that there was a short in the braid. So less talking, we're going to go ahead and get right into it now. So I'm going to move this out of the way. We're going to open this up and take a look at what we've got going on here. I'm going to fire up my soldering iron here so it starts getting warm. And we're going to take this apart and kind of do some work on this brand new unit here. I kind of like buying something brand new that's a couple $100. Actually, I think this was like $170, give or take. I don't actually remember. And then kind of getting into it and seeing what we've got there. So here is the PCB board. And you can see the 4 connections there. So we've got a shield, which are going to, we can see that shield there, the braided copper line. And then we've got a red and a white and a red and a white. So that's good. That's pretty straightforward. I'm going to pull this out of here completely so I have a little easier job of it. I've tried to get everything ready to go so I can make this video as efficiently as possible. Again, I was just going to do this, but I figured this might be interesting for you guys to see somebody else kind of do this process. Let me make sure I can stay in camera there. So there's a couple of the small screws. We'll keep those from getting lost. And let's see if we can get this board. Oh, here's another screw there. So there's actually 3 screws in this. Tell me there's a 4th. There is a 4th. My gosh, I should probably put some glasses on here. Everything starts getting smaller and smaller. There it comes. So 4 screws out, set aside so as not to be lost. And now we've got this out of the board here. So we can see on the back side of the PCB, that's our solder joints there, and then these 4 wires again. So we're going to go ahead and let me get some cutters here. We're going to snip this zip tie. It's holding these clips together. And in this case, we've got items labeled You can see the labels in there. And I don't believe it's critical to have positive and negative, though I will keep the same convention here. So now we've got this ready to go. I'm going to cut these. So I kind of probably will use these BNC connectors. So rather than just cut them off right here, it seems to make a little more sense to give me a little room. I don't need that long of a lead on this. I just also don't want something this short. It's kind of silly to have them so short. So I'm going to probably give myself just enough room on these to make them functional for me, so I can actually make some little connectors to go between a couple of the other tools that I have. So I'm going to say this is about good right here. So these will get used for another project here. I'll maybe take you along on that one too. And now when we come to this here, we've got our clips. These are going to be going to the meter, and that gives me plenty of room. What I'm going to do here is strip these back, and I'm going to take a look at this. It looks like there's about, I don't know, an inch, maybe, what is that, 2 centimeters? So I'm going to strip these back that amount. The goal is not to do any damage on the braid and to keep these nice and symmetrical. Just about nicking that braid. This is kind of an in-between size. It's not, what is that, 10 gauge is where I'm stripping it with these. I might be better off, you know what, give me just a second. So if you guys don't have a stripper tool, you can use a blade, but you want to be really careful with it, because one slip and we'll be taking these things and making them even shorter. So you don't want to cut the braid. So one trick you can do is just roll it back and forth gently, and then give a twist, or not a twist, but a bend. Let me get this camera in a little bit better position so I could kind of keep you guys in focus here. So I can see that I'm just about nicking it there. So you want to be real careful not to nick the braid. It's not the end of the world if you do, but it's better to not. So now that I've kind of went through it again, you can see as I bend this, you can start seeing the braid. And if you do it just deep enough, you might need to give it a couple tries, but it looks like now just by doing that, you can see we've got all the way around it, and we've got through without cutting the braid. It's quite tight. Yeah, this jacket is super tight. It does not want to come off. I'm afraid I'm going to do damage to the braid just trying to strip the jacket off of this. Incredible. So another trick you can do is just cut down the braid. Again, there's a chance you nick the shield, which you don't want to do, but you also don't want to damage the shield by pulling it out of the unit. And I'm quite shocked at how hard that is to get out. I've worked a lot with coax over the years, and yeah, I am doing some damage to this thing. I was going to show you guys another way to do it, but this stuff is so affixed to the jacket. Yeah, it's almost like it's glued in there. So yeah, I kind of boogered that up quite a bit. You can kind of see it there. Just trying to pull the jacket off. It should not have done that. You know what I mean? And now that I've got that, what I'm going to be doing is cutting these off and doing it again. So it's kind of worth it for me to have this thing be nice and symmetrical. So no big deal. I've got plenty of cable here. So what I'm going to do is kind of lesson learn that might be a good, and go as short as possible. So I'm just going to snip these off. So I got to take it a little bit more just so everything is I kind of want it to be as even as possible. I don't want one lead to be longer than the other as much as possible. I mean, come on. Okay, so now we get to try again. I'm going to try it one more time with the blade here, just because I'm kind of shocked. It should not have been that difficult for this jacket to come off. Do I dare do it again? You know what? I have the right tool, so I'm going to use the right tool for it, because I don't want to get these things any shorter. I'd prefer to keep these things as, yeah, this stuff is super affixed to the braid. I think you're only, yeah, so that's better. I mean, if it does that, let's see if I can get you, where'd you go there? Not the end of the world, because we're going to be taking this braid and just bringing it together. Something like that. My meter's telling me, hey, you forgot me on here. So this is what it's eventually going to look like. So I'm just going to go ahead and do it that way. But beware, if you do end up getting these exact clips here, know that this jacket is really on there. You know, what might help would be to warm it up. Let's get an idea of how long that is. It's about that long. Stick it under a heat gun, give it a little bit of heat, and I'll bet that jacket comes off a little better. Let's try that out. Give me a second. I don't have a reflow station in here because I use my reflow quite a bit. But I do have a way to kind of heat this up. And I'm going to keep my fingers here so that way I can feel how hot it's getting. Be careful because you will burn yourself. So that's quite warm. Nope. This stuff is solidly affixed to the jacket. So there is a drawback to using these cables here. Maybe it would have been better to buy the cheaper pair and possibly deal with poor solder from the manufacturer. So I'm going to just go through it this way, kind of give this a score. Same thing. Again, it doesn't really matter as long as you don't ruin the braid. So what we're going to do in this case is just kind of separate this from the other one. Actually worked out a little nicer, having it be kind of frayed when I pulled it off. But there we go. So now we've got these two items here, and I shouldn't get too far ahead of myself because there's a chance we'll be cutting it off and doing it again. So don't be impatient. And I should give myself a little bit more room. I can tell that those are pretty close. And I think on this next one, I am just going to use the stripper tool as intended. And even if the wire gets a little bit frayed, not the end of the world. It's got a shield on it. The shield is good. Sorry, I'm out of camera again. So we're gonna just use the tool as intended and not try to. And see, that's so. It seems a little inconsistent. Using the tool sometimes frays it, sometimes it doesn't. So I'm assuming this wire is a little bit of low quality. These weren't very expensive. I think these Kelvin clips were only, I want to say, they were less than $20, I think, or right around there. So you could only assume that the quality of the wire is not the best. And now that I'm looking at this, we'll see what we get into here once I open these up. I'm hoping for the best. These seem to be, they ohmed out well. Again, I'm not in the camera here. I need to get this camera to where it can actually, I should scoot up a little bit. All right, so we're going to get this braid here towards the end. All right, so now that we did all that, we're going to go ahead and cut into this. again, and I'm going to go with the 18 because I believe that's what this is 18 gauge. So we're going to strip it there. And we've got our one conductor. And we will strip about the same distance with our 18 gauge. And then I'm going to give this a twist too. We'll tin these in just a minute. So we have got these two. We'll make them symmetrical because they got sideways. So that is what we're left with. We've got, this camera is super bright, but I think you get the idea here. We've got our braid here, and then we've got our two conductors that will be tinning in just a minute. So now that I've got that side done, we've got this side done. Oh, not yet. We still got to strip. We've still got to strip these. And I think I'm taking off a little too much of that center conductor. Or, yeah. But it's okay. We'll snip it again if we need to. We could see in here they've got just a, I don't know, again, a couple inches, not quite an inch, inch and a quarter. So I think we're going to be in pretty good shape. So I'm going to go ahead and tin these right now. Make sure that there's no stray ends here. All right. So solder gun is heated up. I've got a mess already. I haven't even done anything, and I've already got a huge mess. Let me get my flux. It's kind of old school soldering flux. You could look at the color of this stuff. It is so amber. This is they don't make flux like that anymore. So I've got this last bit here. So what I'm doing here is I'm just dipping these ends in. We'll do one section at a time. I don't have any of my stuff with me. I've got a set of helping hands. I don't have those in here. I kind of just got to making this video pretty quick. So we'll just kind of do the best we can here. If I need to, I'll go get my helping hands. Let me back you out just a little bit. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a little solder on the tip here. Just the tip. And then I'll do this next one. I'll let you guys actually see this. Let me get a little closer. So a little solder on it. I don't want to get this stuff all in my camera. Yeah, I'm getting it all over my camera lens. You get the idea. There's plenty of soldering tutorials out there that do a much better job than I do. So there we go. I will do the second one here, and I'm going to need to go get some shrink boot because I don't have any of that in here. I've got my garage is where I do a lot of my work, but in here it's just so much cleaner and more comfortable. I got a nice chair, so here's where I usually film my videos. So I just thought I would work in here today since I'm filming this, and it's pretty cold outside today up here in the Northwest. It's just at the changing of the seasons. You can kind of, summer's right around the corner. That one's not taking solder well, so we're going to just add a little bit more flux. That's better. Nice and shiny. You really want nice shiny joints. That's most important. And then we've got this braid here. You're looking for nice shiny solder joints, clean, no fray. Am I in camera there? All right, so we could set that aside for a minute. So I dropped a little bit on there. All right, hold your breath. Don't breathe these fumes. Get an extractor. I don't have my extractor on. I have a little extractor, but I didn't turn it on. We're doing just such a short little job here that I figured we'll be good. Okay, so now we want to desolder these. We're going to do the red first. Again, I don't believe this matters at all to have red and black. This is non-polarity. Oh, it does show polarity there. So I'm going to say that polarity does matter in this case. So I'm going to first go with this red side. And I don't know if I need any more shrink boot. I'll throw a couple zip ties. I should probably put another, see how far this is apart? It's just a bit jank. So I think I will go get a little bit of shrink boot just to put one there and one there, just so I don't have these wires. They're already, I'm wire challenged already. I got wires kind of everywhere. So I'd rather have this be cleaner than not. So give me a second. I will be right back with some shrink boot. And just like that, we've got some shrink boot now. So I'm going to kind of do the same thing they did. Just do a couple little pieces. Of course, we'll cut it a little nicer than that. I could have used a butter knife and did a better job than that. So I'm just going to, I think I might be good with the red just to do on the positive side. So now I'm going to just pass this in here. Take it through. Here's the spot where it's really missing. So we'll leave that there. And I'm going to throw one here towards the end. So that way it's pretty close to when I get done here. And then for the black, I'm going to go ahead and put the shrink boot on now because inevitably I will solder this whole thing and realize that I missed the shrink boot. So I'm going to grab a black here, chuck that in there. And black. So let's get these. Trying to do this quicker than I normally would. I'd probably take quite a bit more time, but I'm just wanting to get this done, get this video up so you guys could kind of, if you pick up one of these LCR meters, I'm assuming you're probably going to run into the same thing I did, that these leads are just kind of rubbish here. And I see I forgot a zip tie too. But one more time running into my garage here. All right, so we said we're going to start with the positive. And now I know that the red and black in this case does not matter. You can see there's a red wire, if this camera will focus. There's a red wire and a white wire on each side. That polarity doesn't matter. But the polarity of positive on this side and negative on this side, I am going to keep. So I'm going to go ahead and desolder this. I'm not going to need my desoldering gun. They're pretty small. So what I'm going to do is just heat this up while I'm pulling. And I could see that's the braid. Just want to make sure I'm so busy trying to make this video, I don't want to lose sight of what I'm doing here. So I'm just going to heat this up, give it a little pull. See if I could burn my fingers in the process. Ooh, it is getting hot. I might need to get my desolderer going. Give me a second. Okay, so right tool for the job, right? Don't need to burn my hands doing this. So if any of you guys have one of these, super, super nice tool, but you'll inevitably run into an issue where after a while this tip gets clogged. I recently bought another tip for it that's, if it'll focus, oh, there we go. It's a bit larger diameter. So it's, because I work on a lot of vintage components, in this case, this is anything but vintage, but this larger diameter tip does a really good job at getting around some of the through-hole components that are on a lot of vintage gear. So we'll see how it does on some more modern gear. I'm assuming it's going to be just fine. So again, we're working on the red here, the positive. And just like that. So make sure that doesn't burn any of my other cords. Spoke too soon. It's done. I just don't want to pull it. All right, so there's our red. So now that we've got that done, we're going to solder the red lead in. So remember, we had the two shields. So we're going to put those shields together, and we're going to give a quick solder of them. Since both of these are shielded, I'm going to take the two shielded lines and run them together. And this is kind of where you can see these cables are quite a bit better than the stock cables. I mean, just having each line shielded, kind of nice. So now that I've soldered all that, let's see if we could, you know what we're going to do. Let's see. As this comes through here, I got plenty of room. So what I'm going to do, we'll grab some of our solder paste. I'm a fan of solder paste. I always kind of want my joints as clean as possible. Where'd our solder go? Hold your breath. I'm in an enclosed room, so holding your breath doesn't do much for you. Get the proper ventilation if you're going to solder. All right, so again, I'm probably not in camera. Sorry about that. Well, maybe we could work on that in the edit. We'll try to zoom in where I can. So I'm going to snip off this little end here. I have one stray strand that I don't want to make any contact with anything. So I'm going to just clean this up just a bit. Okay, so here's what we've got now, and I'm going to put the braid inside there if I can get it to fit. I think it will. Oh, it's quite tight. Let's grab a pair of needle nose and see if we could thin that up a bit. Again, even my tool section out here is pretty paltry. I've been trying to build two shops where I could work out here and have all the same tools that I have in my garage area. There we go. So now I kind of crimped that in a little bit, and it went right through. So we're going to go ahead and solder this one up. I want to make sure that these are going to make it to their intended location. What I'm going to do is first solder this braid, so at least that's one less that I need to think about. So here's where I was saying you could take a toothpick, and I just kind of put some flux on there like that. This is where my helping hands would have been really handy. See what I did there? All right. I'm going to go right to that pad. So I'm going to snip this even shorter. See if I can let you guys see what I'm doing here. So these are going to be super short. I'm going to tin these and then cut it. It seems to fray a little less. If you tin them and then cut them, you'll have a really nice edge. So put a little flux on it. Let's get our solder over here. Let's not burn our new Kelvin clips. You're holding your breath, right? Okay, so there's one. That's not the prettiest solder joint ever. That's nice. So, yeah, it would have been better for me to have tinned that and then cut it rather than cutting it and then tin it. So now what we're going to do is put a little bit of flux on these pads, and I'll clean this with some IPA after I'm all done. So I'm not worried about being too clean. And here's where I'm going to focus again, and I'm going to tin these pads. I really need a set of helping hands, so give me a second. I've got a little pair in here. I don't ever use this pair. I've had this for years, and I have a pretty nice pair. It's got multi-hands, and I really like that, but this will serve the purpose. Okay, so now and here's the little helping hand I was referring to. Kind of just a little cheapy, but it does a good job. So we've got those pads. We've got some flux on them, so now we're just going to put some solder on them. So okay, hope you guys could see that. And now, if I can bend this in place. Okay, so that's one side pretty much done. Let me let you guys take a look at that. So you can see there, I just kind of soldered right onto the pad. It came all the way through to the other side, but no big deal. So now I'm going to unsolder this second side here. And I think we're done with the desolderer, so I'm going to, well, first let's get these off here, make sure that, yep. So one more removed, so I'm going to set those aside, shut off my desolderer, make sure the tip is cleaned. And this is really, if you do any real solder work, it is worth its weight in gold. I mean, I still use copper braid every now and then and a little solder sucker when I need to. But overall, it's worth its weight in gold. Okay, so now we're going to work on this side here. And we've got our braid going in there. I'm going to tin these pads before I do that, since I know I'm going to run into the same situation. So I'm going to put some flux. Let me show you guys a little closer here, show you guys what I'm doing. So I'm just kind of dabbing some flux on these. And I probably could just solder right to these pads, but I'm not going to do that. I would rather leave it as stock as possible. So if I ever needed to put this thing back together, which I don't foresee me having to do that, at least it's ready to go. So I'm going to tin these pads. So now we'll snip this here. We're going to flatten this like we did the last one. I'm going to tin that pad as well. I can't get that. What I can't do is I can't get this thick wire here from the black side into that little hole right there. It's quite small. So there we go. So now that pad is tinned as well. So we'll set this back in its holder there. We're going to get these wires. What I'm going to do is tin these all the way down, because I can tell we're getting really tight quarters in here. So, I mean, in regards to surface mount, this is gigantic, but it still is quite tight. Everything is just... All right, so now we tin those a little farther down, and I'm going to cut these pretty short here. Hope we're not going too short. Hope you got safety glasses on. All right, and we've got our black shrink boot on there. So now what I'm going to do is stop talking for a second and pay attention to what I'm doing. So I'm going to solder I think I'm going to solder, yeah, I'm going to solder the center conductors first. Ooh, that's hot. All right. Let's check our work here. Make sure these are firmly affixed. So that's what we've got. There's no bridges going in between these. Solder joints are nice and shiny, though I have seen better work. They are affixed. They look to be in pretty good shape. So what I'm going to do is get a zip tie so we can zip tie all these together, and then I'm going to push these all the way, maybe not all the way to the end because I still got to get these into this. So we've got to put this all back together, and I'm thinking I may need to hollow this out. We'll see how that goes. Let's kind of give it a pre-fit. Oh, maybe it'll work. So I have a feeling it's still, even with this big cluster of wires, it is still going to fit. So I'm going to go ahead and put this thing back together here, put the screws in, and we'll give it a go. All right. So, so yeah, I forgot the strain relief. Awesome. Thanks, guys, for pointing that out while I was doing this. You couldn't have interrupted and said, hey, hey. All right, so let's take it back apart. Go get a zip tie. I'm just so wanting to get this thing back in there and see if I need to trim this plastic at all. So I'm going to go get a zip tie. I'm going to shrink this shrink boot. We're going to get this thing done. But I'm going to put this zip tie into the back side. I think there's a little bit more room there. So that's another, pay attention to where your zip tie was. Because what I'm doing here is putting the zip tie, the head of it, and the back side of the board here. Make sure it's facing the right way. Because I think there's a little bit more room in the back side than the front side, especially with these big thick wires here. They're kind of really taking up some much needed space. Look at that, went right into the all right, so now I'm going to tuck these up, make sure that they're not shorting anything, make sure I'm not stressing any of those wires out. And tuck those up a little bit. I'm going to get these as clean as possible. I've got some OCD when it comes to wire management. I'd like my wires to be nice and straight as possible. For that matter, I should have put one shrink boot over all of them. That would have been super nice. So something else you guys can do when you're doing all this and you're putting your shrink boot on, put one heavy shrink boot over all of them. I'm going to shut my solder gun off. I believe we're done with that. All these joints are holding up. Put one piece of shrink boot over the whole thing, and then that'll be that much cleaner. And you could send me a picture of it saying how custom, and I'll be jealous, and I'll take this whole thing apart just so I could do that. All right, there's those at the end here. That looks good. Now we'll put this thing back together. This went that way. Yeah, that actually looks pretty nice. It looks like they're just going to make it. We'll see. We'll keep our fingers crossed. Don't over tighten any of these screws. There's no point in that. Just kind of get them snug. Remember, there's 4 of them. I'm looking around on my bench. I'm missing a 4th screw. Oh, there it is. I see it. Did you guys see that screw? Yeah, you saw that, but you didn't see me miss the zip tie, right? Okay, here we go. So now we've got that. Now this is the guard. So we'll put that guard in there, and let's see. This is the moment of truth. Will these wires fit? Ooh, they're a little bit tight. And I kind of don't want that jank. See, what's happening is it's just not closing. So what I'm going to do is go take my Dremel tool. Yeah, as much as I hate to do that on a pretty pricey little tool, I have no choice. I got to go Dremel that out. I'm not going to just kind of force this thing in here or leave it all bulging. So I'm going to take this end right here and Dremel it out because it's not allowing the wires to go in well. Be right back. I didn't even need to leave the room. I'm not going to make that big of a deal. I took my snips, my flush cutters, and just snipped off those ends. They're pretty small. To go through the process of getting a Dremel and grinding on it, not that big of a deal. And that is closing much better. Still not perfect. I could probably file that, just that little bit off there. Let's see if I could snip any more off of that. No, I kind of can't. I'm going to go file it. Gave it a quick little file. Kind of see that there. So now that little protrusion is not in the way. Let's see if it fits now. And it does. So without having to put any real pressure on it, you can see it's kind of closed up there. If I put a little pressure, it's not much and it's not bowing. So now we can put this thing back together the rest of the way. I really wish I would have put one piece of shrink boot there. That would have looked really nice. I'm hoping you guys do that. Put some shrink boot on it. Make your wires look nice. All right. So now this is it complete. Yeah, pretty nice. All right. So let's go for the moment of truth here. Let's put this in. I don't know if you guys will be able to see that. Let me clean off my area here. My gosh, I'm getting surrounded with things here. So here's the moment of truth as we power this up. All right. And now the calibration procedure is pretty straightforward. You just clip the clips together. Again, before I used to do it with these here. So now we'll just be clipping these together. You know what? I think let's see. One of them you have to do it opened and closed. So let me start this way. I forget which calibration procedure this is. Open. Okay, so you leave the connectors open first, and then you hit cal again, and then it counts down. Make sure those connectors are left open. They're not touching each other. And this takes 30 seconds. It's a pretty long procedure, and I don't think there's any form of PROM in here, an EEPROM that remembers your calibration. So you have to do this every time you power it on, which is that's probably my only real complaint so far about this unit. Okay, let's see. It passed. So now we'll short it. So we'll hit cal again, and it says short. You can see that there. So we'll short these, clip them together, and then you hit cal again, and it will go through its 30-second process. And here's where that one YouTuber, his failed, and after checking it, he realized that the solder job from the factory was a little rushed. Maybe more rushed than what we did here today, though I think I did rush this quite a bit to get this done. But if we pass here, I got a feeling we're in good shape. Fingers crossed. Let's see where we're at. I don't want to unsolder all this and take it all back apart. And we passed. What do you know? Pretty neat. So Now we can go ahead and take some measurements, and we've got a little bit of flexibility here, literally. I'm going to take these, take this. It came with this. I have a lot of these things, these Velcro. Maybe I put this on. I'm not sure if it came with it or if I put it on. So I don't want to say it came with it. Oh, we've got these we want to shrink on here too. Let's go ahead and do that. We'll find the middle point. So there's these two ends here. About the center is right about there. Let's go ahead and shrink these. That was it. We've got a meter now that we can actually use without these little kind of, I mean, you could see the difference. Even if I wanted to do everything you're doing, you've kind of got your meter in this really awkward, fiddly position by using these small little alligator clips that came with it. So now these will make this tool that much more useful. I hope you learned something on this video. If you have any feedback, if you've picked up one of these meters, your pros and cons to this DE-5000. If you don't have one of these and you do any inductance measuring, I would say go ahead and grab one, because so far I've got a few tools that I can do inductance reading with. They're most those little PC or the board based kind of just cheapy $12, and I'm always left wondering if they're accurate, and they've given me off measurements when I put them onto a standard, so they're just not as dependable as I would like them to be. This so far, I've been using it now for I've only had it for a couple months, but I use it seems like almost daily, and it does a really good job. I'm going to get out of here now, go eat some lunch. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. We'll see you on the next one. Bye for now.